I'm Dr. Amy L. Beam. I am retired from the IT profession. I've spent more than 40 years designing and developing software, including very large software projects. I was, for example, the IT director for the Army procurement software. After it ran into trouble and their entire staff quit, I was hired to fix the problems, hire new staff, and train them. And I've had other large contracts with Pentagon software and private sector. I am very dismayed about the Dominion voting machines and the software that's used for them, and I want to talk about that. I'll probably do it in sections because there's so much to discuss. The user manual is available online for Dominion voting machines. I've downloaded it as a PDF file before it's deleted. I'm sure it will disappear soon. So the first thing, I spent 3 hours looking at it. I could spend some more hours looking at it and identifying even more vulnerabilities. The first thing I want to say about voting software is that it should be completely automated. There should be no manual interface where a user at any point, except the final point of tabulation, should be able to change records. The feature of this software that Dominion, the company, sold their voting machines to over 2,000 sites in the United States and to many foreign countries. The main feature that they tout is that the user can go in and change the data in any results. They can change the vote count. They can change the vote for a candidate. They can change a vote for a party. They can delete records. It's absolutely astonishing. I could hardly believe that Dominion would actually put this user manual there for the whole world to see. It's built-in corruption. So the first thing I want to talk about is log files. By the way, it's in plain English and any reader can read it. If you're not too technical with developing software, you might be a little confused about it. So I'll explain it. First, we start with log files. There is a statement in the user manual with the screenshot when the user at a precinct uploads, that is, transfers their results of the election, how many votes for one candidate, how many for another. They have to include the precinct that it's being sent from. They have a choice. They can upload the results file, that is, the vote outcome. They can upload the log file, and they can upload the image file. The results file is the number of votes each candidate got in the precinct. The image file is the image of the ballot. The log file is the record of the transactions. Every time something was changed to that results file, there should be a record of it. It was modified, it was deleted, it was updated. In other words, if the vote was updated, there should be a post, a line item post for every time something happened to the results file. And that's called the log file. In computer software, all software has log files. So if you have an error, you can go read the log file and try to identify where that error happened. Again, the log file is optional to update. So the precincts did not have to update the log file, which would show every time they made a change to the voter results file. There's also an option to override the log file, and this is where the vulnerability lies. So if I've created a results file showing the votes for each Democrat and Republican candidate, and I decide I want to change that file, I could actually delete it. Now, the log file should have a record of that file being deleted. and then it's created new, and it should have a record with a time and date stamp of when the new file was created and when the new data was entered. Every time something happens to that file, there should be a line in the log file with the time and date stamp showing the action that was taken. There's an option to override the log file. So here's how it works. The user in a precinct can delete the results file, the results of the vote count for each party. They can delete that file. They can create a new file and put new results, that is, new vote counts, into that file. The deletion and creation of a new file and uploading new numbers would be listed in the log file. But when the precinct makes its report, it uploads all its results of the vote. It can also upload the log file, and it can overwrite the log file that they previously uploaded, if they even uploaded it. They can overwrite it. What does overwrite mean? It means it will delete the old log file. There will be no traceable record that the results file was deleted and created new, and new numbers were put into it. There'll be no record of that if your log file overwrites the previous log file. So I looked at that, I read it, I studied the whole manual. I read the manual start to finish in 3 hours and made a lot of notes on it. And there's many striking features of the vulnerability for vote fraud in this software. And this is just one of at least a dozen different things. Each one of them is just as egregious as this one. But the ability to overwrite, that is, deletes the previous log file, is glaring. So there's no way to trace back what happened. In other words, we call it covering your tracks. Carrying on about log files. How does a log file get created? When the programmer who wrote the software designed it, every time there's a transaction that happens, that is like a user interface with the screen, or if it's not by the screen, it's automated. The program is just counting votes electronically. Every time something happens, there should be a line written to the log file. But that is not automatic. It depends on the programmer who wrote the software to decide if when a transaction happens, they also make a listing or a line item in the log file. So in order to know what the log files look like, we need to get Dominion's technical manual for the software engineers, the programmers. I'm reading just the user manual, which is a non-technical manual, and they make no description of the contents of the log file. But I will give you another example of a log file being deleted. I'm reading about these results files. Again, the result file is the file that contains the precinct and the vote count for each party, each candidate. That is the results file. It goes through different statuses, or they call them states. When you first create this file, it's in its initial state. You've created a file that's empty for the precinct. Then there's a state called validated. That means that the people at the voting precinct have reviewed the votes, and they have validated that the votes are accurate. They're signed, the date is correct, everything was correct, and it's validated. The next stage is published. And this means that these can be included in reports and exported. That means sent from one computer to another, that is uploaded. And the count is final. That's published. There's also a status or state called rejected. This rejected state indicates that the result file, that is the vote, should not be included at a later point in a set of published results. The result files in the state can be deleted by the user. I'll say that again. The result file can be, when it's in the rejected status or state, can be deleted by the user. My question is, if the user gets to delete a results file containing votes for both parties, they get to delete that file, is there a line item posted to a log that says at this time and date, this file, results file for this precinct was deleted? So we need to look at the log files. If there's no post going to the log file, this is another potential vulnerability where fraud can occur. Now I will proceed to talk about Dominion software process called adjudication. They don't define in the user manual what they mean by adjudication, but I can infer what it means. I know what the word adjudication means. It means to evaluate something and make a decision. So each vote, if it was a mail-in vote particularly, needs to see if there's a signature, if the date is a valid date before the polls were to close, before the mail-in votes were to be received, and is that voter registered? Are they registered to vote? In other words, are they a legal vote? So this is adjudication. This Dominion software gives the user the right to skip the adjudication process. I'm reading it right in front of me on the screen. Skipped adjudication. The following actions will cause a result file, that is the vote, to be in the skipped adjudication status. You can upload your vote results and skip the adjudication. Skip seeing if there's a signature or a date. You can just skip that process. There's a whole page explaining how this works. Skipping it. You can upload files that are in the adjudication state. That is, they have to be reviewed. And you can, at the time of uploading them, you can change this state and make it ready to publish, so that there will be no opportunity to identify which votes have to be adjudicated, that is, reviewed. You can just skip the adjudication process altogether. I'll read here from their manual, from the Dominion user manual. In these different states that they have, initial, validated, published, rejected, pending adjudication, skipped adjudication, in adjudication, and then finally adjudicated, the file's been decided on. They have another state called N-A. Capital letter N, capital A. They don't state what that stands for, but I can assume that means not adjudicated. Here's what happens. The following actions will cause a result file, that's the vote, to be in the NA status. And this is what it means. Any cast vote level result file loaded while adjudication support is disabled. Any non-cast vote level result file loaded into the system, any manual entry, NA, not adjudicated. Adjudicating, that is checking the votes, can be disabled at many points in this software. Very disturbing. So one of the key selling features of Dominion software to the election boards throughout America is that users could change the data. They could add files, delete files, change fields. They could control it. It was not all automated. It could be done manually. So if we're going to do things manually, we may as well have paper ballots with signatures and thumbprints and have the paper ballots counted the way we used to do it when I was growing up. There is no point to have automated software when the every process in the automation of that voting, when every process can be manually overridden. There is no point to have this voting software because it is totally open to fraud, totally. Here are the things in the manual that it says a user can edit. I'm only going to list some of them because it's a long list and you have to read the whole manual. Throughout the manual, it shows how you can edit fields. But here's a list. Total voters cast. That can be edited manually. In other words, it doesn't have to match what the computer calculated. The computer might have calculated 150,000 votes. You don't like that? You can go change that field to be 220,000 votes. That as a total vote cast. So what you've entered manually doesn't have to match what the computer electronically calculated. You can also edit overvotes. So suppose there were 200,000 votes, and in that precinct there's only 150,000 registered voters. We've got a problem. 200,000 people voted in a count in a precinct where only 150,000 voters were registered. So we are 50,000 votes over vote. Well, guess what? That field can be manually edited. So the user can go change it, the vote count, to 150,000. So it doesn't show that there were more voters than there were registered voters. More votes than there were registered voters. That field can be edited. Well, what happens if you edit the field for overvotes and you reduce it from 200,000 to 150,000, the number of registered voters? What are you going to do with those 50,000 votes? So you can go back to the field that's called the total voters cast, and you have to change that field too. And the thing about it is you can change that field. The user can override all of these fields. Undervotes, overvotes, blank votes, double votes, invalid votes, and write-in overrides. Now here's the frightening thing. The user can also change the votes per candidate and for party affiliation. They can manually change these. When they upload their results file, maybe they upload it again. They don't like the results from before, so they change the votes and they upload it again. They can override the log file, so there will be no record of what happened previously. I tell you, this software was written for fraud. And I haven't even gotten to looking at the code or the technical manual. I'm just looking at what the user manual uses as selling points. This is software that was written for fraud. I want to add here my party affiliation. I'm a registered Democrat. I voted Democrat all my life. I stopped voting after Carter, who I did support him as president and voted for him. After that, I was not happy with the Democratic Party. I did vote again for Obama. I was not happy with his presidency and his handling of Iraq. And since then, I have not voted. I did not vote for Trump the first time. I did not support Trump. I do not like his immigration policy. I especially do not like his vengeance to put Julian Assange in prison for life and to extradite him from the UK. So I'm very opposed to those policies. I also could not vote for Joe Biden because I did read about the Hunter Biden logs and the appearance, I think it's pretty well documented, corruption by the Chinese Communist Party in China and Russia and so forth. So I didn't vote for either candidate. And I am not trying to support either candidate. I am trying to support to preserve free and fair elections in America, to preserve the fiber of our country.